Webroot and IT Glue announced some new enhancements. Apollo Global Management finalizes Tech Data's acquisition, continued demand for next-generation solutions, and more, plus a special guest interview with SolarWinds MSP President John Pagliuca. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 153, Inherently Disinfected. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 152. My name is Matt Whitlock, Technology Editor, Online Director, and your host of this fine program for you. And who are you? You are the MSPs, you are the VARs, you are the IT integrators, you're the sound technological advisors of businesses, both large and small. And if that doesn't sound like you, well, maybe you'll be one of those by the time this show is over. You never know. You're going to learn a lot. And who are you going to learn a lot from? The man of the hour, who is always writing great stories and good content and great interviews and giving you all you need to know to make your business successful. And he's also a snappy dresser, so you can take some fashion advice from him too. Executive Editor, Rich Freeman.
Now, define a lot, Matt. You said you're going to learn a lot. I want to know where the bar is set.
So let's say they're going to learn 2 new vocabulary words, 3 new acronyms, and enough that they can sound more intelligent to their peers with a sentence that is less than 20 words.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. I know of one acronym already that might be new. So yeah, good.
Excellent. So you know what? You can form a plan with that, and that's very specific. And I think all of our listeners and viewers out there would appreciate that. So normally at this time, it seems like almost every show for the last 20 shows, I've been able to say, "Hey, we got a great guest host." But you know what, Rich? Sometimes we don't want a guest host. Sometimes it just needs to be you and me, just like the old days, right? Telling the stories, yapping back and forth. We normally do like having a guest host on. We were not able to rope anybody in because of the 4th of July holiday, and everyone's kind of busy, and a lot of people are off. So we decided that it's just gonna be Rich and I, and we're gonna be happy about it. And folks, you're gonna be happy about it too, as we go and we learn all these great stories. We've got lots of news. We've got other stories. We do have a great interview coming up, though, with John Pagliuca, the president of SolarWinds MSP. We were able to get him on with us here before we dive into the 4th of July holiday. So, Rich, this is going to be an odd 4th of July holiday because I know in Seattle, there's usually probably like a lot of fireworks and big stuff. What are you going to do over the weekend? Because I'm sure that none of that's happening.
Well, you're right. Yeah. So, and I live in, an apartment building here. So I'm not doing a barbecue in my living room. So it'll be more of an indoors kind of 4th of July, I guess, this year. Yeah. Because you're right. There is normally actually back in the old days, there used to be 2 big official city fireworks events, one of which took place just a few hundred yards from here. But that has sort of winnowed down to 1, and then that won't be happening this year because you can't fill Gasworks Park, as it's called, with thousands of people. So I don't know. It'll be more of a lower key 4th of July this year. We'll blow up virtual fireworks.
Yeah, the concept of apartment living is very odd and strange to me because I define my life based on how many barbecue grills I have. Yeah. And you've been here, Rich. I have a wide variety of barbecue grilling apparatus. But you can't have that in an apartment. Do you have like one of those like George Foreman lean green grilling machines to at least simulate the barbecue experience at home?
I don't. I don't. It's a thought. It's a whole other story. I won't go into it. But you and I both know Manuel Pagliuca quite well. He's been a guest host on this podcast before, and he and his family came to visit me once here in Seattle. And he's a great cook, and he loves to make blackened salmon. And he said, "Okay, I'm gonna make you, and as a thank you for having us over for dinner, I'm gonna make you our blackened salmon." And that was about as close to indoor grilling as I've ever come. There's a lot of smoke produced when you do that, and it was like, "Okay, open the windows, people, get the fans out, because we're gonna set the fire alarm off. We're not careful."
I heard that story on the news when the fire department had to come to your building because of a smoke incident due to blackened salmon. Yeah, I can't imagine that. But now I think I know what to get you for Christmas. Is we got to get you an indoor grill.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be a big one. We're going to get you an indoor grill and a pound of ground beef. You can make your own hamburger in the home. It's not as good as like a propane or a good charcoal grill, but I agree that may not be the safest thing to have in your living room there next to your airliner chair that you write on.
Right.
So we are week 744 into the coronavirus pandemic, and the stories are still coming out from that, and lots of interesting things happening there. But the industry's reacting, and there's news coming out, and everyone's kind of talking about it. So I know, Rich, this week we're going to talk about some of those things with John Pagliuca later, and I'm excited about that. We got some other stories about acquisitions, and the industry moves on, as we would say, and we've got lots of other things to talk about as well. So if there's anything else you want to say, I'm used to having a guest here to keep this conversation rolling now. We've been spoiled, Rich. I can say.
I know. I love the way
Anything.
you spinned that before, by the way, that, we threw this party and we didn't want anybody to come.
That's right. That's right. It's just us. We don't need anybody else. It's our party. We can cry if we want to, and we do on a very regular basis. All right. So, Rich, why don't we just go ahead? We got a lot to cover. Let's dive into the news. Webroot adds DNS filtering to a solution. Tell us about that.
Well, they have added a feature to their DNS filtering solution, and I promised you just minutes ago. I promised you an acronym, and this one was new to me. I don't know if it'll be new to everyone in the audience, but that acronym is DOH. DOH. It stands for DNS over HTTPS. And it's an interesting addition to their DNS filtering product. So, HTTP, just in general, not even just in the context of this Webroot solution, any traffic that's encrypted with HTTPS is, invisible to intruders, et cetera. But the piece of that communication that is actually in the clear and visible is the initial DNS request. When you call up some protected encrypted site, and your browser is resolving the DNS address that you're going to, all of that is happening in the clear, and potentially somebody could, learn, if they're just watching that, they can learn a little bit about your habits and the websites that you've been, so they can kind of snoop into your privacy. There's also the potential for a man-in-the-middle attack. Yep. So this is obviously something for makers of DNS filtering software to be concerned about. The idea basically with one of those systems is we're going to redirect all the traffic to a resolving server owned by the security company, and that is going to allow that security company to see if it's a good or a bad address that you're trying to go to, and filter out the dangerous addresses. But you don't want that traffic. You don't want the traffic that's heading out to the security vendor to be vulnerable to interception and man-in-the-middle attacks. So there's a technology that has been added, or a standard that has been created recently called DNS over HTTPS that allows you to protect that DNS request as well as all the other encrypted portions of the communication. According to Webroot, no company in the DNS filtering space has taken advantage of this before. They have now added it to their solution so that they can basically say you're protected completely end to end, if you were. There's no part of that communication that isn't encrypted. And I can't verify it, but they're saying it's a first, and it seems like a plausible claim, if nothing else, because that standard is a relatively new one, I think, still. I can't remember if it was approved in 2018 or 2019, but it hasn't been around all that long.
Yeah, I've heard about companies working on this. As someone who does a lot of web-related things, DNS is generally in the clear. I'm curious how not necessarily you may not know how the protocol works, but when you sign up for this, does the security company then become your DNS provider in that case, or how does that work?
I believe that's exactly how it works. That what you do is set everything up so that all the requests are going, in this case, to Webroot, and that way Webroot can watch what you're doing, keep you away from stuff, places you don't want to be going.
Okay. So it's not that, and you said those protocols between you and Webroot are encrypted in that case. So is there like is there like a client that's on the machine that does this then and handles all the DNS inquiries, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, I assume the encryption decryption portion of that works exactly the same way it would with any other HTTPS communication. So I don't, you know, I
probably don't know off the top of your head. I'd be
Yeah.
kind of curious how it works if you have to have a client installed that handles this. But like, if you have Webroot installed, you'd have a client on the machine that could probably do that, I would think. So
Right.
interesting. Yeah, interesting stuff. And I like the name. It makes you think of Homer Simpson every time.
Exactly.
Every time you say it. So, you know, what do you got on there? Dope. We got that on there. I like it. I like it. Good stuff. And is this a new paid feature of Webroot, or is it something that they're just including if you already subscribe to their DNS filtering?
Yeah, I believe they just added that to the product. It's a new feature of the product. So if you're, you know, subscribing, you're under contract now. This is just something you've gained.
Well, very good. So Webroot folks out there who are doing DNS filtering in with their solution, new feature named, you know, for Homer Simpson's famous catchphrase. So go and check it out, and then you'll be more secure, and your customers will be more secure, which is good. That's good, Rich. It's an odd day.
Yeah,
I gotta tell you. Hey, if you want to learn more about this feature, there's a lot more in here on this story. So make sure that if you're listening along here, folks, go to the show page for episode 152. ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. We put links to all the stories in here, and then there's some links into like blog posts by the company if you want to learn more about these features, you know, in depth than what we're kind of talking about here. And if you're watching on YouTube, same thing. Go to the description area at the top. Open that area up, and we'll include the links there for you as well, so you can follow along and learn more. Because why just learn when you can learn more? Right, Rich?
Learn a lot.
Learn a lot, but not more than 20 words in a sentence, I think is what we settled on, right? Well, we did cover the one acronym, so we got 2 acronyms to go.
I gotta work, yeah.
All right, next story. IT Glue is in the news. They have rolled out security and network visibility updates. It's good to see, Rich. What are we seeing on the network now?
The IT Glue folks have actually just introduced a whole bunch of new features for their partner base. And it just so happens, maybe not so coincidentally, they all, a lot of them fall within the realm of security. And we can get into the network visibility piece of things too. But you know, the security, big priority right now. MSPs are under attack. That includes the documentation systems. There's all sorts of really valuable information in there, including passwords. So you know, every vendor of software used by MSPs has to be security, especially security conscious right now. So some new interesting security related features here. So. And some of these will be really obvious, interesting to IT Glue users. It may be a little bit harder for people who don't use that system to appreciate some of these things. But I'll give you a quick example of something that, as I understand it, any IT Glue user will appreciate, because apparently MSPs have been asking IT Glue this for a while. So they, IT Glue added some time back the ability to organize your customers' passwords into folders. But you still had to basically set permissions for the most part. You have to set permissions for those passwords one by one. There was some sort of bulk updating, or is a bulk updating kind of process, but it's still a one-off kind of thing. So you know, if you happen to be adding 4 or 5 different passwords, you can set the same permissions for them all at once, but you have to do it every time some new password is created. What they've added now is the ability to set permissions for a folder full of passwords. And every time you put a password into the folder, it automatically inherits the permissions that you set for the folder. So you can create a folder, for example, for the accounting department at some customer that you serve. You know, they need to have elevated protections. You can define that for the folder. You don't have to go through that again every time some new accountant gets hired. You know, that you put the password in there, and it just automatically inherits those permission settings. They introduced something that they're calling the vault. And you know, you need to be really careful, obviously, if you're IT Glue, to keep passwords safe from attackers. So they have this system where they've split the elements that you need to recover a password into 3 different places. So they store the password itself in one place. That's all heavily encrypted. The encryption key is stored in a second location. And then there's a passphrase, and every IT Glue user has their own passphrase, but there's a passphrase that you use to access the encryption key, which will decrypt the password if you're trying to access the password. In the past, that passphrase was stored in the cloud, on IT Glue infrastructure, along with the encryption key and the passwords. But they've created this technology that goes into your browser now that they call the Vault, and that allows you to keep your passphrase on your browser. So even if somebody breaks into IT Glue's system on the back end in the cloud, they've only got 2 of the 3 things that they need to get at the passwords. They would also have to break into your particular machine in order to get any of the passwords that you're responsible for. And all of the encryption and decryption, apparently, that you do takes place locally on your device through your browser utilizing the Vault. So some extra safety built in there.
That's very different how passphrases used to be stored, right? The passphrase used to be stored in some B-list celebrity on a game show, wasn't it?
Yeah, and and it turns out that was not a terribly secure arrangement either, because Paul Lind, he's just talking, and so yeah, probably not the best storage repository for passphrases. You're better off in the browser.
But yes, I agree. Much better in the browser than B-list celebrities.
So here's another, this kind of goes into the realm of time saver for MSPs, as well as being security related, sort of like the password folders thing. IT Glue has a product called MyGlue, which is a password management system that your end users can use to organize and protect their passwords. Up until now, every time you add a user, every time you're trying to get somebody set up, you have to create an account for them in MyGlue, and there's some work involved in that. They've now added the ability to integrate MyGlue with a single sign-on solution from, Okta, Duo. Passly is the product from ID Agent, which is a sister company of IT Glue's under the Kaseya banner. So any single sign-on solution that supports the SAML 2.0 standard can now integrate with MyGlue, and as a result, it's one less password for the end user to have to juggle and remember. They use that same SSO to get into MyGlue, and there's less setup, fewer password management chores for the MSP as well. And then on the network visibility side, a few things, but the one I'll kind of focus on because it's the most interesting to me, and I still want to understand how they're doing this a little bit better. But they have a product called Network Glue, which is a network management system. And like other network management systems, you can kind of set it loose on a customer's network, and it'll go out and it'll look for all the nodes on the network, and it'll map them and show you how they're all related. The really difficult thing to do with that kind of software is to identify all those nodes. I mean, there's obviously skill involved in finding them, but knowing what is that particular device, what does that do, who made it, that's not an easy thing to do. And Network Glue can now apparently do that. They have integrated with a third-party database that associates MAC addresses with particular manufacturers and device types. And utilizing that functionality now, when Network Glue creates a map for you, it will also show you what those different devices are and who made them. And that obviously can be really useful information, especially, frankly, these days when you're not necessarily setting foot inside a customer's office as often as you did before. You can't really trace the cable and find out what that what that device is. In this case, to have it just kind of show up on your screen can actually be a pretty handy thing.
Right, and it documents all that for you. Like you don't have to manually do anything, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge time saver. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, very handy feature. And like I said, I want to know a little bit more. I'd just be curious to know what is the third-party database and how complete is it, and so on, because this is an issue I've talked about with other network management companies, and I know it's it's a tough nut to crack, but they have now rolled this out to Network Glue users. And Network Glue is only a little bit over a year old. It came out May of last year, so kind of a big milestone for that product.
Very cool. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff there to talk about. Now, and I always ask the question about pricing because There's always the question that you get when new things are added. Are these like included now in subscriptions, or is this new stuff you have to subscribe to and pay a little extra per seat for?
As far as I know, well, let's see now. On the network glue functionality, I don't believe that is anything extra. I don't think they're charging for the vault either. So no, I believe this all just kind of rolls into what you were already doing with them.
Cool. And do they include any B-list celebrities in order to hold on to your passwords for you in case you don't want to use the web browser?
There would be an incremental fee for that. Yes.
All right. So if you could choose any B-list celebrity from, say, up to the 60s to the 90s to store your passwords with, Rich, what celebrity would you choose?
Well, we're talking game shows here. I mean, does Charles Nelson Riley count as a B list, or is that already down to the C list? I don't know.
Well, you can do C list for sure. For sure. Yeah. Who are all the celebrities who were on that show at the time? Do you remember that game show?
Well, which one are we talking about here? Because the passphrase thing, there was a particular game show.
There was a show, yeah, like the password is.
Right.
And like they had to figure out what the password was using protocols that have nothing to do with SAML 2.0, by the way.
Right. Yeah. It was a non-compliant game show. Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, so well, let's see. That was called Password. The game show was actually called Password.
Well, there you go.
So what do you know? There you go. Password, the game show, which was created by Bob Stewart. Host was Alan Ludden.
All right, sure.
So yeah, and that ran in the 60s. So they didn't have very good data security in the 60s.
No.
So
no, I mean, Alan Ludden, trustworthy fella, but probably not your password security tool of choice.
It ran for a long time.
Yeah.
Early 1960s to 1975, and there were even spin-offs called Password Plus and Super Password. Now, you know that once they add the word super to the front of it, they've pretty much lost all hope, and they know it's not going to work. But they try anyway. And then they tried $1 Million Password. And I don't know, maybe back in 2008, maybe that was to try to compete with the $1 Million Pyramid. Or was it $1 Million Pyramid? No, it was the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? That wasn't that the show that they had?
Well, there was that, yeah, with Regis.
Yeah, show entitled CBS new version, and actually hosted by Regis, believe it or not. Wow, the series was taped, and I guess it didn't work. I don't know. Interesting stuff, Rich. I could talk game shows all day long. maybe if we go back to doing a live event, we could re-bring Password to the limelight and get it going again.
Great. Yeah, how IT appropriate would a ChannelPro game of Password be?
It would be. That'd be fun. We got to think about that, folks. If you're out there listening or watching, and you have any game show suggestions to do in a live format or even in a virtual format, or that you want us to talk about here on the show, go and send us an email, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. Put a comment in the chat area in YouTube if you have a suggestion, and we will absolutely check it out. All right, Rich, Apollo. This is an acquisition story. We've heard stories like this a million times. Now, let me guess, is this a private equity company, Apollo Global Management?
It absolutely is.
So another large company swallowed up by private equity. Which company is it, Rich?
Well, this is Tech Data that we're talking about, and to be clear, this sale was announced last November. The agreement for the acquisition was announced last November. It only officially went into effect this week, though. It's taken all that time since then, for reasons a little unclear to me, for them to work all of that out. But the deal has now gone through. Apollo Global Management has bought out all of the Tech Data shareholders. That was a publicly listed company. If you own shares of common stock, you got $145 per share for them from Apollo. Apollo is now the whole owner of Tech Data. They put $3.75 billion, $3.7 billion equity investment into the company. Total value on that deal, if I remember right, was on the order of $6 billion. So
wait. Now let's stop on that number for a second.
Yeah.
billion.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there were a series of, so, we talk about private equity acquisitions of vendors pretty regularly on the show because there's a lot of it going on in the industry. But, the bigger deals typically that we talk about are in the $1.5 billion kind of zone. There was this little wave of deals towards the end of 2019 that got bigger than that. When Sophos sold to Thoma Bravo, I want to say it was for something like 3.4 billion or 4.
Yeah, this is like
I don't
double
know.
the biggest deal I think we've talked about here on the show. Do you know how many B-list celebrities you could hire for your kid's birthday party with $6 billion?
Yeah, it's true. You wouldn't need to choose between Charles Nelson Riley and Paul Lind. You could just get them and every other contestant who's ever been on any of those shows, and probably have some money left over.
I would imagine quite a bit with that amount. You could even get a couple A-listers with that too, I bet. Your very own Regis Philbin playing password at your private equity party. So Rich, tell me, so it's a lot of money. There's a mind-boggling amount of money. Tell us what Apollo is going to be doing with tech data.
So this is what makes this story significant. So, we already knew that eventually Apollo was going to own Tech Data. It was a question of when does that deal actually happen. But if you are a Tech Data partner and you hear that a private equity firm has bought the company, if you hear that $6 billion was involved in that transaction, you might understandably get concerned, especially in a down economy, that they're going to be looking for ways to make cuts. So that maybe this winds up affecting your experience as a Tech Data partner. Maybe they're cutting back on support and cutting back on account reps or something like that. Where are they going to look to save money? And the short answer is, I guess we don't really know. We're going to have to watch how this goes. But as an encouraging first sign, when Apollo announced that they have completed this transaction, they also announced that they are going to invest $750 million into Tech Data. And they are investing this in a variety of what they're calling digital transformation initiatives. Tech Data, I should point out, has been really focused on digital transformation for a number of years now. There were these 4 sort of strategic pillars that they were organizing their business plan around. One of them was digitizing and streamlining business processes. That, I assume, is the kind of digital transformation Apollo was talking about. And so we'll see where the $750 million goes and what kind of impact that winds up having for partners, if they can kind of feel the efficiency in one way or another. But I would just say, it's encouraging to hear that the first thing Apollo wanted the world to know is that they're investing a rather substantial amount of money in the company. They're not, looking to, or at least not looking exclusively to make cutbacks.
Interesting. So the other thing we've seen with a lot of these private equity companies, Rich, is private equity firms that are strategically buying lots of different vendors or solutions that work with MSPs in the space, and then they're kind of hooking them together in ways to make them more competitive. Who else does Apollo own? Is any of that going on here? Or, I mean, I think is already a really big company anyway. But is there a strategy behind this purchase versus other acquisitions they've made?
So, to the best of my knowledge, and Apollo is an enormous fund, to the best of my knowledge, they don't have an obvious candidate to roll Tech Data together with now. But there are hints, there are indications in terms of what Tech Data, or excuse me, Apollo was talking about when it announced that this transaction is final. Further acquisitions appear potentially to be in the mix for the future. So there might be some kind of strategy that they have in mind about acquiring other distribution companies or companies that are adjacent to what Tech Data does today and grow the business in that way.
Interesting stuff. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But you'd think after they spend $6 billion, they're out of money, but probably not, because these funds tend to have more money than what they know what to do with, because they haven't spent it on B-list celebrities. So they're just holding on to it and then, not going to Vegas every weekend, I guess.
That's probably like the trick interview question if you're applying for a job at one of these companies. Is which B-list celebrity would you? And if you have an answer, you're disqualified. You know, the
Rich, all
correct
right.
is that's maybe not where I'm spending money.
Right. How could you say that celebrity and not this one? I'm trying to think of what like B-list celebrities from like 1970s. Do you know the names of any of them? I can picture a whole bunch in my head, especially the ones that did the game show circuit. I just
Right.
can't think of any names off the top of my head. But let's not go down that road. Let me ask you a different question.
Oh yeah.
If you had $6 billion, okay, you could spend on anything other than tech data, what would you spend it on?
Gosh, what a great question. Because I mean, $6 billion, it's kind of an unimaginable figure. So what could one buy for you know what? A sports franchise.
Now that is interesting. That is okay, because that's fun. That's entertainment. It gives you something you could sink your time into.
Sure.
I like that. Okay, so which sports franchise would you buy?
Oh gosh. And who knows what the price tag would be, but man, if I could buy the Seahawks, that would be fun.
I think I would go that route too. I'm a big hockey fan, but I think if I was going to buy a sports franchise, it would be a baseball franchise, because that kind of keeps you busy the whole year, because there's not a lot of downtime in baseball because there's so many games, and then you have, training camps and all that kind of stuff. So baseball, I think, would be a good one to do.
Yeah,
Good one to
that's a
do.
good choice.
I also wouldn't mind buying a table tennis team, because ping pong is played on the world stage. You can do a lot of travel if you have it. Are there ping pong franchises, Rich? Are they like ping pong teams? You know a lot about ping pong. That's why I was going to ask.
Exactly. I'm your go-to on ping pong, that's for sure. Well, I mean, there are teams. I don't know if they're professional teams.
Have you seen some of the videos of like there's got to be they're professionals, at least at the country level, right? Like the
Right.
U.S. ping pong team.
Yes,
Have you
definitely.
seen some of the videos of those people? Like when they're crazy how fast they can do that stuff. So all right, so Rich would buy the Seahawks. I would go. I don't know I don't know what I would do with $6 billion, Rich. Maybe I'd buy a country. Maybe I'd buy a country, like a small country out in the maybe an island. I think for $6 billion, I could buy a small island, power it, and then stay away from the world. Maybe that's what I would do. Just do our little podcast from my remote oceanfront view on my island. I'm not really sure. I have to think about that some more. All right, so we're still going to talk about Tech Data, who is working on next generation solutions. There's apparently still demand. Now, this doesn't seem shocking that there would be demand for the next generation of, well, anything. But what is the story here, Rich?
Well, I don't know if it's shocking, but it is at least a little bit surprising right now. So what we're talking about here, Tech Data did an online conference last week, and our coverage of it went up after we recorded our last podcast, which is why we're talking about it this week. And they covered a lot of different topics on the during the event, and so cybersecurity, for example, there's a lot of need for cybersecurity solutions, and they're seeing that at Tech Data. Nothing terribly surprising there, but what we hear a lot of from distributors and from vendors and from MSPs is it's actually a pretty good time to be selling managed services or anything that's a recurring revenue source. Project work is a little bit harder to get going right now, because sometimes there are capital expenses involved in that. People are conserving cash. So it's been a little harder for people who rely on that project-related income, but there are exceptions to that rule that Tech Data was talking about a little bit during this conference, and some of those are in the IoT area, and the increased demand is directly related to the coronavirus pandemic. So there are sort of prepackaged solutions that you can get from Tech Data to handle things like spatial analytics. And I mean, spatial analytics is, kind of figuring out how many people and maybe how many objects are in a given space. Probably a relatively limited set of applications for that particular technology in the past, but in the age of social distancing, suddenly that is something that a lot of companies are interested in doing. There are a lot of companies, that are interested now in getting some kind of a read on whether or not people who are potentially infected are coming into a building, coming into the office. And so there are solutions that involve thermometers, IoT thermometers that can kind of screen people for a potential fever when they're coming into a building. Telemedicine, I mean, unless you really have an urgent issue, a lot of people aren't going to see their doctor face to face now, but they do still need to get feedback, get advice from doctors. And so telehealth has been a growth area for a lot of different companies. So it was just interesting to get some examples from Tech Data of project-related work that not only is continuing to happen despite the recession and the pandemic, but is actually kind of seeing some acceleration.
Yeah, well, that is interesting, and good news that a lot of there's a lot of interest and demand for those types of solutions. And I can imagine those are the only examples that they gave was like telemedicine, or are there other solutions and other verticals that are in high demand right now?
Well, I mean, in the so the examples that they were highlighting in their conversation with me and during the event are, telemedicine and the spatial analytics and hand sanitizing solution. And the interesting thing about that, by the way, is that I don't know if none of these solutions I'm talking about is new and developed this year. But I know a lot of them were created last year, including at least one or more of these sort of hand sanitizing systems involving a kiosk or something like that. Yeah, a lot of different IoT solutions in different verticals, or that are horizontally applicable. Like wayfinding solutions, for example, which you could use in a hospital if somebody wants to find their way from the front door to this department or that patient's room. Being able to do that, without having to touch your finger to a touch screen or something like that these days would be good. But that's not exclusively relevant to a hospital. Any building that has a wayfinding system or wants to add a way for people to find their way around that doesn't involve touching anything, a touchless system of that kind is something that businesses will be looking for.
I guess that would probably be universal just going forward of everything. It looks like people don't want to touch things anymore. So do we think that the human race is going to start missing the tactile sensation of the physical touch as we go forward? Can we have a touchless keyboard?
That's an interesting question. A touchless keyboard. I don't know that I've seen one of those, but could be coming.
Or maybe the touchless mouse, or what else? What other things, Rich, do we touch in our everyday lives that we shouldn't touch anymore?
Well,
you can't say somebody's spouse because that's probably already stopped when they got married.
Yeah. Well, the thing that comes immediately to mind is the ATM keyboard, right? Or the gas pump. I was pumping gas the other day, and half the city of Seattle's been on that ATM.
That's true. That's true. I also no longer want to touch boxes of breakfast cereal. And I don't want to touch. I don't want to touch my razor anymore, even though I touch it. I still, it vibrates in my hand, and I don't like that feeling. So we should not touch those anymore either, Rich.
Okay. And breakfast cereal. Is there a reason there?
Just because I like people to pour it for me. I'm just lazy.
But if you tell people there's a public health angle, maybe they'll do it for you.
It's a public health crisis when it comes to breakfast cereal, Rich. We need to make sure that everyone is informed and that all of our top people are working on solutions for that. Interesting. Yeah, no, interesting. So we're diving off into the weeds here again. So there's a 5G connection here that I saw in the story. They were talking about a lot of these solutions are requiring 5G to work. How do you think 5G is going to impact the different solutions that we're talking about here? And is there an IoT play for a lot of MSPs as they look forward to partnering with companies for these kinds of solutions?
Well, there's definitely an IoT play for partners. At Tech Data in particular, all these different solutions that we've been talking about are developed and offered through their IoT specialty group. So if you decide, you work with clinics and you install a wayfinding, touchless wayfinding solution via Tech Data, that could be your entry point into the IoT. Now, I will say a nuance to what you were kind of saying there is none of these solutions is dependent upon 5G. And in fact, Tech Data, like a lot of different companies right now, they're very excited about 5G. That, you know, they're talking about how it's coming very soon, and they're going to be all over it. But all these companies always emphasize anytime 5G comes up right now that you can do what you need to do today to take advantage of these systems through LTE. So I know Tech Data would say, don't wait for 5G. If you need that kind of mobile connectivity, we can take care of you today. And then the other thing that they say, and this came up in the article and it's worth pointing out, is mobile connectivity in general is actually an interesting opportunity for channel partners. And this has been true on an ongoing basis, Tech Data argues, but it's become more so in the work from home era, where people might not have a secure or reliable Wi-Fi. They might actually do better with an LTE connection. That's something that you can set them up with. But even outside of that context, according to the Tech Data folks that I spoke with, there tends to be a preconception in the channel that I'm going to create I'm going to sell my customer all the different elements of the solution that they need, except for the broadband, the mobile broadband, because they're going to get that straight from T-Mobile or Verizon. Those companies sell direct. They don't really have a channel play. And so that's not revenue I'm going to be able to get a piece of. And at least at Tech Data, they say that really is a misconception, that you're leaving money on the table if you don't bundle mobile connectivity into the solution. And they work with a lot of these big names, the Verizons and T-Mobiles and AT&Ts and so on. And those companies have supposedly gotten a lot more channel friendly because they are beginning to learn the value of having somebody to take care of that last mile, if you will, and provide that direct service to the customer so that they don't need to do that. So if you are selling anything basically to an end user that would benefit from mobile connectivity, make sure that you're the one who's providing that to your customer. Don't just kind of direct them to the carrier, because there is an opportunity for you to get a little extra value on that deal.
And I would have to imagine most of the big distributors like Tech Data, for example, in this article, but also probably Synex and DNH, they probably all have similar arrangements where you can resell cellular connectivity direct.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, it's been a while now, but in the past, we've kind of talked about a program that Synex had with the mobile carriers where they were compensating partners for signups, basic activations. So yeah, they all work with the mobile carriers, and I'm sure would echo what Tech Data is saying about, this is something that you should be bundling into your deals.
And for those who might be nervous, 5G and cellular connectivity, LTE, that's a touchless product. You don't have to touch the waves in order to sell them.
It is inherently disinfected.
Inherently disinfected. Oh, that might be a show title. I love it. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we got a great interview lined up with John Pagliuca, president of SolarWinds MSP. We're going to be talking about a couple of stories that we alluded to last week, Rich, about how we've become MSPs have become essential workers, essentially. That was not a very good choice of words, but MSPs are kind of the essential backbone of SMB IT. IT is absolutely necessary, and SolarWinds MSP is recognizing that and talking about that, as well as a couple other things. So we are going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be back with John Pagliuca. You won't want to miss it. Stick around. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to part 2 of ChannelPro Weekly. We have a great special guest interview lined up for you. I'm very excited to have on the show the president of SolarWinds MSP, John Pagliuca. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having me. Too bad we can't do this in person, but it's great to hear your voice, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, and of course, we've always loved to see everybody in person, but sadly, the times do not allow that to happen, which is actually one of the reasons why you're here to talk. We're going to talk a little bit about essential workers and managed services. But before we do that, in case people are in the audience here are not familiar with you, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about SolarWinds MSP?
Yeah, sure. Like you mentioned, my name is John Pagliuca. I'm the president here of SolarWinds MSP. SolarWinds MSP is part of SolarWinds, which is a publicly traded company, we're widely recognized as the #1 networking and monitoring company in the world. I think that's something that we do and we're proud of, both for our MSPs and for our IT pros. SolarWinds has about over 25,000 MSPs, well over 7 million or so devices that we help monitor, and well over 500,000 small medium businesses across the globe that's relying on our software inside of the SolarWinds MSP business unit to make sure that we're monitoring and protecting their network. So myself, I came through the LogicNow acquisition about 4 years ago now, and I was charged with the responsibility of bringing that LogicNow technology together with that Enable very strong technology and forming SolarWinds MSP. So it's been a great journey. We continue on evolving our journey, and it's been a great ride for the last 4 years.
It sounds like it. I also want to point out to the audience that there's a great story that we were talking about at the beginning of the show that involves Costa Rican monkeys. And I'd love for you to share this story because it was really funny, and I wanted to hear.
Yeah, sure. No, it's good. So last time Rich and I were speaking in an interview, I was with my family and some friends in Costa Rica, and we were starting the interview, and of course, I trained the group. Hey, we're going to be doing this interview. It's for the press, and it's a real serious kind of interview that we're having, and we're out there, and I'm in my bedroom, and I can hear a bunch of these I think they call it capuchin monkeys, like the little white-faced monkeys that they have in Costa Rica, going absolutely crazy. I don't know if they found some type of fruit or whatever, going absolutely crazy outside my balcony. And I said, Rich, do you hear that? And then luckily he and the team were not able to that. And then I had my kids on the other side of the door banging on the door. So I had my own human little monkeys on my kids banging on the door. So I was in the middle of this crazy environment the last time we spoke, but it was fun.
So the moral of the story is when you're doing an interview, always make sure that you have control of your monkeys.
Well, and just to add on, that 2 days after that, I was on that same balcony and working with my laptop, and one of those monkeys came down and actually grabbed my SolarWinds issued laptop by the screen and tried to actually take it with him, but it was a good thing it was too big for him. And I have a permanent scratch on my laptop from it, but I think he was maybe a Costa Rican MSP maybe.
That's awesome. Well, hopefully you signed him up as a partner while he was grabbing your laptop there. So there's a lot to cover and a lot to talk about with managed services and the managed services market with MSPs as being looked at as essential workers in these times. Why don't we kick off the discussion with that, John?
Yeah, sure. I've said into some of my team and to the greater community, the MSPs became the line behind the front line, and in a lot of cases, and not to trivialize the efforts and the heroic efforts that we've seen across the globe by our frontline workers, whether they be in the healthcare industry, whether it be in transport and food transport and trucking and other logistics that were so vital in these critical times. But the MSPs very much became essential because they were allowing those frontline workers to do their jobs, to make sure that those frontline workers had their information, their data, their systems up and running, so they could actually effectively do their jobs. And quite frankly, I was proud to see how the MSP community responded. In our data, in our offering, we have a cloud-based offering, and we're able to see real time the activity of the MSPs. And as this pandemic went from Asia to Western Europe to other parts of Europe to finally to North America and South America, we could go wherever the epicenter of this virus was. We could actually see the MSPs logging into their systems when it was over Italy and when it was over Spain. the number of times an MSP would actually log into their systems was actually 2x, twice. It was like, up 100% as far as the activity level. Why? Because the MSPs were thrown into this environment where they had to transform, and they had to transform across a bunch of different dimensions. They had to first transform their own workforce and make sure their own workforce was ready and able in that remote environment. But then secondly, and the big lift was where they had to go and help transform these small, medium businesses across the globe to transform their businesses to make sure they could get remote access, to make sure they were able to monitor maybe even a home laptop or a home desktop, making sure that the machines were secure, making sure that folks could get access to their data, protect their data. And I was proud. It also, quite frankly, put a tremendous weight on my and my team's shoulders, because we understood the responsibility that our MSPs had, and that dependency, and that also that carried through responsibility that SolarWinds had to make sure systems were up, data was protected. Unfortunately, the bad guys saw this world event, or these continuing kind of world events, as an opportunity. And unfortunately, they went after where certain verticals and certain industries were being attacked the most. And we saw a ramp up in anti-phishing and different types of fraudulent cyber type of attacks and cyber type of activity. And our MSPs were right there to make sure that these small, medium businesses were ready and protected. And in the cases where if they weren't ready and protected, how they could back up and recover this data and keep those entities from having an extinction event.
Not coincidentally, and I should say this conversation from my end is sort of a follow-up to a presentation that you gave, I guess, a couple of weeks ago at an online partner event that SolarWinds MSP did, where you talked about this issue and how essential MSPs have become. You also shared some information about the sort of financial repercussions of the fact that businesses rely on MSPs now. And I have just a few of those in front of me. You said, you guys went out, you did a survey of your partners. 42% of them said that they have seen revenue drop since the COVID-19 outbreak. But that implies that over half of them have actually not seen revenue go down. And only about 10% of the partners that you surveyed projected a substantial revenue decline in the future. And so, I mean, and you noted on the air, this, not what we were maybe fearing going into the pandemic here, the impact that this could have on the managed services market. So, I mean, to what degree did those numbers catch you by surprise? How surprised are you by the resilience that we appear to be seeing among MSPs right now?
Yeah, so it's the surprise came by the vertical or by the industry. We have some MSPs that have a very much a vertical focus, right? We have MSPs that focus on dentist office, and we have certain MSPs that focus on the hospitality industry or other types of services, restaurant industry. So we have these MSPs, not all, but we have some MSPs that are a little bit more vertical focused. I was really concerned about those MSPs that were vertical focused that were being most impacted, so that their carry through vertical that they're servicing would be impacted. And that's where I was surprised, actually, Rich, is that what we saw. And by the way, it was not easy. And I can walk you through some of the things that we tried to do to help some of these folks. But even the MSP that was focusing on the dentist office, the MSP that was focusing on the hospitality, we did see a slowdown, and I'm sure that's part of that 48% that did see a hit. But they were able to, for the most part, they were able to endure that, because those industries, even though those industries had to take a pause, what couldn't take a pause is their infrastructure. What couldn't take a pause was their IT productivity, and what definitely couldn't take a pause was their security. So I think that was kind of the lesson learned, really, is that even though some of their businesses or the way that they were conducting business prior to COVID, during this peak, while it had to be modified, what couldn't be modified, and even if it had to be paused or stopped in some cases, the service that the IT professionals provide and the MSPs provide, that actually didn't go on pause. So it slowed, and we saw that, and we saw folks seeking some type of either relief in a couple of different ways, and we saw that. But it surprised me that the folks that were in the verticals that were most impacted, or that were supporting the line that was most impacted, they were still able to endure. And we're seeing great signs of real positive traction now across all the industries and across all the verticals.
So, thinking back to that March, April timeframe, as well as now. So when this all began, when MSPs came to you, what kinds of challenges were they running into? What kind of questions did they have? What kind of assistance did they ask for? And have you seen that change at all over time? I'm curious if the landscape has shifted a little bit as we're a few months in now.
Yeah, great question. So we saw a couple of different things. We saw there was definitely a struggle with MSPs being able to stand up a brand new service, right? So if you were trying to roll out a different type of business continuity offering, a different type of security offering, or if you were trying to do some type of expand into a new vertical, or bring on anything that was new from their business point of view or services point of view, I think that got paused. That definitely got challenged. For sure. As we talk with partners individually and in groups, and we have our partner advisory council, the PAC, and we have these other groups. One of the common themes that came up, obviously, and I mentioned this in the call, was the ability to work remotely. So they all had to figure that out for their employees, which that wasn't that bad, but more for both their staff, but also for their SMBs. For their staff, a lot of the things that we talked to actually was even just how to keep them engaged, and something that we talk about here at SolarWinds was even just keeping them engaged, keeping the mental health high and healthy, keeping that connective tissue between co-workers at MSPs and with their customers. One of the other common themes, some of our partners that we spoke with, they said, I had this customer, I had this client for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. And I didn't really know that client as much as I got to know them in the last 90 days. And, it's like every life event, right? Whenever there's real hardship, you tend to see the best in people. And I think where our best MSPs really shine through was providing that guiding light for these SMBs that realized, geez, I wasn't ready for a remote workforce. I didn't have everything secure. I didn't have my endpoints protected. I didn't have proper cloud-based backup, right? And they found themselves in a spot that they weren't prepared for, right? Like I talk a lot in my previous conversations in years past about evolution and change, and that's a good thing. And these SMBs didn't have that luxury of evolution. Evolution implies like a kind of a slow, methodical kind of change. This was a transformation. And the MSPs were thrown in to be that guide in this crazy environment, and our best ones really really stood up and really provided that trusted guide. We spend a lot of time, and we focused a lot on what was happening in the short term from a financial point of view. One of the most important things I think that we did, and I know our community appreciated, was we quickly arranged for external experts to present some online sessions for MSPs to help navigate, depending on the various different government financial assistance programs that were out there, right? So whether you're in the U.S., the U.K., or Canada, or other geos, we set up webcasts and webinars. And we opened up our team and experts that we brought in externally, that we funded to provide this level of counsel in these unprecedented times. We were lucky to have the means to do that, and the strength to do that, and the platform to do that, being part of SolarWinds. And I found that our MSPs, took us up on that offer. They wanted to hear from the experts in those fields so that they could get the funding, and they also wanted to hear from each other, and we continue to do that. One of the lessons that I've been keeping to remind my sales team, my support team, my customer success folks, my product folks, is this is a really important time to listen. and to hear what the pain points are, both on the product side and on the business side. And what we also find is MSPs want to talk to each other. So we've also increased our investment in pulling on more peer-to-peer based webinars, more of these advisory groups, more of these advisory councils, so that we could get them together, share their experiences, and then broadcast those experiences to our wider base.
You know, and that's something that SolarWinds and MSP has done a lot really in the last couple of years. Is there's been a lot of initiatives that we've seen around customer success, and some initiatives there, including some new resources that were recently added. How critical have those initiatives been in getting partners through these times and helping them be successful right now?
Yeah, you know, so as fast as as COVID has forced us to do a lot of technological and operational transformations, it in one hand, on the other hand, it also got back to basics as far as pushing what's really important. And I talked about that relationship before. At the end of the day, in these unprecedented times, you need to be able to depend. You can't depend on what the future is going to hold. You have to depend on your partners, right, and in your ecosystem. And for us, and we were the good news is in the second half of last year, we made a very explicit decision to increase our investment in customer success folks from a bunch of different dimensions. And I don't want this to come off like a commercial, but we expanded and brought on teams that were not commission based, that were 100% focused and dedicated to the utility and the growth of that MSP. So we stood up a separate onboarding team. We stood up a customer care team to deal with some of the more business operational side. We set up a customer success team that sit there, and the way that we invested in that is we wanted to make sure we had enough ratio that our customer success folks could actually know and understand the MSPs that they're dealing with on a first name basis. And we're growing that. We're not exactly where I want to be, and COVID actually slowed that down, but we're going to continue to grow to that. So when there's a question, we're giving them very much a bespoke answer, because we know their business, we know what their goals are. I tell people all the time, there is no one size fits all. There is no one answer for what good is or what your goals are. This is very much a personal journey that all the MSPs are, whether they be a 2-person shop or a 2,000-person shop. And what those goals are and what the mission is very personal. And our job is to understand what that personal agenda is and what that personal goal is, and create a program for that MSP. And the only way you can do that is by it's good old fashioned human interaction and investing in the employee, and investing in the MSPs with bringing on more SolarWinds employees. That, and then, we acquired Passportal a little over a year ago. And one of the added benefits, or the kind of the treasures in that, is we brought on folks like Colin Knox and Ryan Barker from Passportal, who were MSPs, right? And Colin is an MSP and was an MSP. So he's brought to the forefront of my executive team and my leadership every day the view of that MSP and making sure we're doing right by the MSP. He was a big, he and Mike Cullen were really the two big driving forces behind our COVID resource center that we put on. So you go on our website, we have a site dedicated to everything that we could possibly imagine, whether it be health ideas or financial ideas or other business ideas, to help these MSPs go through that. And so bringing on more of that DNA and bringing on folks that really know it from the inside out and have been somewhat, born and grew up in this industry was a huge benefit for us. And we're going to continue to invest in there, because we stand by, our mission, and we remind ourselves every day, we only grow if the MSPs grow. We're only successful if they're successful. And we're putting our money and our resources where our mouth is, type of thing.
Well, and he also said it's important that you're on a first name basis, with these teams. Now, is that far enough, or can you go into nickname territory as well?
My goal is that they should know their the kids' names and birthdays is what I joke. And by the way, we're not there yet. We're ratcheting up that investment. I think we do a great job in some geographies and in some regions, and we're going to continue to invest to make sure we have that experience. I don't know about nicknames, but I'm going to go for kids' names and birthdays type of thing.
Pets are important there too, also,
Especially
right,
if they have
Rich?
monkeys. Yep.
Yeah, especially monkeys. That's so funny.
So, John, we're still in a fluid situation, obviously, with the coronavirus. There are economies reopening and others that are maybe halting that process a little bit. It's going to be that way for a while. We all understand. But I mean, as you look down the road for the MSPs out there, are there new opportunities, expanded opportunities for them that you see coming and that they should be preparing for, and you're maybe working with them to help them take advantage of?
Yeah, so in that survey that you referenced earlier, Rich, we asked 500 MSPs. We continue to talk to these folks. We continue to talk to these councils. Overwhelmingly, expanding their security services, that true, complete, security coverage for that SMB it continues to be number one. And there's so many different levels and layers on security that we're going to continue to bring the best of breed and the best to market that MSPs can use in a safe way, in an affordable way, in an efficient way, because that's important as well. They need to be able to deploy this stuff and not bog down their teams as well. So that's by far number one. We're seeing an increase in cloud services where we're mindful of MSPs pushing more and more to the cloud. I see an opportunity as we stand up more and more SaaS applications. What happens when you stand up more and more SaaS applications? They start to talk to each other, and they're dependent on each other for workflow. We'll start leaning on making sure that we're monitoring those handoffs between different SaaS applications and overall the SaaS applications, and trying to help the MSP optimize the use for those cloud services. So we see that, and then apart from that, there's two other areas for MSPs. One of the top 5 complaints or concerns or challenges for MSPs, and this goes back 20 years, is talent and finding talent and retaining talent. And so in this market, unfortunately, we are seeing folks, whether it be in the US or in Europe or in Asia, we are seeing unemployment rise. And if they're an IT professional inside of a shop that had to be downsized or is being impacted by this, there's an opportunity for MSPs to go out and recruit this talent and retain this talent. And for me, our strong MSPs, that upper quartile, that upper half, it's an opportunity for them to go on the attack and to gain some talent, retain that talent so they can push forward. So that's the other bit. So for me, it's definitely security. We see some cloud services. It's an opportunity to bring in some talent. And if they do all that right, if they're bringing on the right talent, if they're bringing on the security services, if they become that trusted advisor for these SMBs during these unprecedented times, then this whole concept of being commoditized or marginalized or being undercut in price, those become a distant thing in the past, because those SMBs appreciate the value that you're bringing to them, the security that you're bringing to them, the business advice and the business continuity that you're bringing to them. And my strong wager is that doing the right things there will very much protect your ability to retain your customers and retain your customers at a price point that's profitable for you and meaningful for you.
So you kind of touched on, I think, or maybe implied the answer to this question when you were talking just before about opportunities in security, the SaaS management challenges that are increasing right now. As you look at the SolarWinds MSP product roadmap and product portfolio, have you made any adjustments to that based on the new needs MSPs are dealing with and the needs down the road you anticipate them having?
No, you know what? I wouldn't say we changed anything on our roadmap. It quite frankly reaffirmed that we're on the right track. Security's been something that we've been talking about for a couple of years. It's not a secret. I think the industry's been talking about it for a couple of years. I think our approach has been won by partnering with strong, I'd call enterprise level security companies, and pulling them into our ecosystem and integrating them in a way that's both efficient for our MSPs but still powerful for the SMB, is one that I think is unique in the industry, and I think that gives us an edge. So we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to build and partner and bring in weapons grade security for our MSPs to use. That's more of a continuation. The other part that was also on our roadmap, but it's just been kind of reaffirmed, is this idea around scalability, where we continue to see, M&A was super hot prior to this. My thesis is that there's been a little bit of a lull, but we're starting to see that pick up. And as that picks up, MSPs will continue to get larger. They'll continue to add more customers themselves, and having an offering that can scale to 100,000 devices in a way that is dependable, for me, is also a big push. So I wouldn't say we really changed anything. What it has done is kind of reaffirmed our roadmap, and geez, what I'm, as a business owner and business leader, what I'm willing to do is invest more to bring in those security offerings and some of these business automation offerings sooner, because the opportunity is here. It's been reaffirmed by some of these changes in the market. And, for me, that means I can lean in, and maybe where some others in the industry are figuring out a reduction in force or cutting back an investment, I'm at the benefit here by being part of this greater SolarWinds organization, that I can lean in and invest a little bit heavier to make sure we can try to realize and pull in that roadmap a little bit more.
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot of the right things, and a lot of the things that are helping your partners be successful in these times, and learning a lot and doing a lot. So that's great. We have time for one last question, and I'm gonna shift gears, if I can, on you, John, and ask you, as we record this, we're going into the 4th of July weekend. What does the Pagliuca family do 4th of July? How do you celebrate?
Yeah, great question. So, I'm a son of Italian immigrants. So that means a couple things. That means pasta, and that means big Italian families. With COVID, it's been a little bit of a challenge, and we've not aggregated or assembled as big as we normally do. But yeah, you know what? We're gonna do a pool barbecue, and barbecue in my house means pasta, pizza, and of course some traditional barbecue. But we'll do that with my parents, and we'll be properly socially distanced, but we'll be outside, and we'll be enjoying it. No fireworks probably this year, but that's okay. How about you? You guys doing anything fun?
Well, Rich, how do you celebrate 4th of July up in your Seattle apartment? How does that work?
Well, it'll be interesting this year. Ordinarily, there is a big fireworks show here in Seattle at a place called Gasworks Park, where everyone packs in like sardines. That will not be happening. So I don't know what the official celebrations will be. I'll have to have a socially distanced celebration of my own.
Well, so I can say for us, I'll be with family. Now I live kind of in a rural area, just shy of the Wisconsin border. So fireworks are very accessible to us here on the northern Illinois border. So we just have to make sure that when you go and you acquire a lot of fireworks, which we did, you have to invite all the neighbors. Otherwise, they call the cops on you when you set them off. So that's what we're doing, is setting off fireworks and avoiding cops.
Cool.
So, John, thank you so much for being on with us today. I really do appreciate you being here. For those who maybe want to learn more about SolarWinds MSP, if they're not familiar, or connect with you somehow, how can they do that?
Yeah, sure. I'd say hop on our site. You'll see SolarWindsMSP.com. Hop on our site. Feel free to ping me, and hey, my email is john.pagliuca@solarwinds.com. And I always actually encourage, whether they be MSPs that are our partners today, or prospects, or just anyone in the industry, ping me on LinkedIn, send me an email directly. I think you'll find me and my team quite accessible, and we love to hear, because the more that we can listen, the more that we can learn, and the better that we can serve. So yeah. Hopefully everyone has a great 4th of July. My kids are looking for sparklers, or as we say in Boston, sparklers. But we'll have a good time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for being here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I do have a museum pick and a tech pick for you, and Rich will wrap things up with predicting the past, which he does with sparkling clarity, and then he tries to predict the future, and he's right, what, 30% of the time, Rich, give or
On a good
take.
week.
It's a pretty good track record
Not bad.
for crystal ball gazing. So we will be right back. Stick around for that. See you in a few. And welcome back to part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly, where we are going to wrap up the show with some regular end of the show features. I've got a museum pick and a tech pick for you, and Rich will, as I just alluded to, I really at the end of that interview 5 seconds ago, Rich will try to predict the future, and it will be interesting. However, I'm going to throw Rich a curveball because we don't have a guest host this week. We usually do a little segment we like to call 5 Questions, and we play that game of 5 questions with a guest host, but we don't have one today. But you know what, Rich? We've never played 5 Questions with you. So I think I just decided this like 5 seconds before we started recording this particular segment. I am going to play 5 questions with you, and I'm going to come up with some crazy questions to ask you. Are you ready? You know how the segment works.
I do.
All right, but the pressure's on me now because I got to come up with all 5 questions because you can't ask yourself a question because you would know the answer, and you would make it an easy question.
I would.
All right. So here we go. Question number 1. If I sent you a George Foreman lean green grilling machine for Christmas, would you use it?
Yes. I have used one of those before because my parents, I guess they don't have it anymore, but they used to have one. And cooking with them, I have used it before, and I have made an awesome grilled cheese sandwich, on one of those, and I would be happy to make a hamburger. So yeah, you bet.
All right. So, I'll lead that into question number 2. Name the first 3 things you would grill in your new George Foreman grilling machine.
See, now the thing is, it's like I need the little pamphlet to kind of give me the great idea because I don't really know what you can or can't grill on that. But so the hamburger thing, that's pretty obvious.
You can kind of put in almost anything on those things, I think, right? You could probably put a piece of fish on it, even.
I was just going to say, like, fit, because I'm thinking, what would I put on a grill? I would, fish, grilled salmon. So maybe, George Foreman salmon would be awesome. Now, I guess you can't just put anything that you would put on a grill. Can you put a cob of corn on there?
That's a good. There might be a height restriction for the item, so I'm not. That's a good question. I'm not really sure on that. I know you couldn't put breakfast cereal in it, though, unless you like extra toasted Cheerios, because they might slide off. I don't know about corn. I don't know if corn would work, but most forms of meat, and I think like anything that's probably like yay tall,
So grilled vegetables are great too. I'll bet you that would work. Yeah,
you can really do like sliced zucchini and put that on there. That might work. I like it. All right. Some good ideas. All right. We're going to mix it up. Rich, you are a resident of Seattle, and it's summertime in Seattle. What do you do in Seattle before pre-COVID, we'll say post-COVID pandemic? What is a good weekend for Rich Freeman in Seattle?
Well, let's see. So in better times, in normal times, I have a share of a set of season tickets to the Seattle Mariners that I co-own with a friend. So it's 2 tickets, and there are I guess these days it's 3 other parties that we share them with. So 81 home games ordinarily, and we go to, well, at least have the tickets for a 4th of those games. We wind up selling them some of the time, but on a great summer Saturday, that would definitely be part of the weekend. And I'm actually within walking. It's like a 30-minute walk, but I am within walking distance of the stadium here. So walk down to the ballpark, taking a ball game. If you walk in the other direction, there is this awesome park here in the downtown Seattle area called the Olympic Sculpture Park. And it's officially owned by the Seattle Art Museum, but it's just this great outdoor park. And that's like my favorite place. If and when we get nice weather here, which we do from right around this time of year, typically into about mid-September, I am really happy to just walk up to the Olympic Sculpture Park with a book, take off my shoes, lie back on the grass, read, snooze, hang out. That would definitely be be a part of it as well. And then, this city is is just filled with wonderful bars and restaurants that are all closed and inaccessible to us now. But ordinarily, that would definitely factor into the weekend plans as well. All sorts of great places to eat and drink.
Very, very fun. Very interesting. I know I'm looking forward to when next year, when hockey gets when Seattle gets its NHL team.
Yeah.
I know I'm planning on coming, and we're going to catch the first Blackhawks versus. Did they come up with a name? Did they finally decide a name for that team? I haven't really been watching the news.
It's a great question. I have not heard about them officially, so I don't think so. I don't think they've named it yet. So
okay, so whatever they end up naming it, it'll be Blackhawks versus that team. I'm going to come in my Blackhawks garb and see how many Seattle people can yell at me in one game. So that'll be a lot of fun.
This is a very polite city. You will be probably disappointed how little nastiness that attracts. But I see that at the Mariners games all the time. People show up in some other city's colors, and it's okay. Nobody hassles you.
Well, we'll see. Times are changing. Everyone's been inside, and they've been building up their desire to scream insults at people. So, but that's from the Chicago area. So you can't walk down the street in Chicago without somebody yelling something inappropriate at you. All right, question number, I think I'm on 3. We'll try to go through these a little quicker.
I think that was 3. I think we're.
Oh, that was 3. Question number 4. Rich, what was your first car, and do you still own your first car? Because I know you've had the same car for like 100 years.
Yeah. So the car I drive now, I've had for a long time. It is not my first car. My first car is something else. So, and I bought it from a friend. It was a 1971 Volvo 164. And I can't remember the mileage on it when I got it, but it was over 200,000 miles when I got rid of it. And I inherited the car with a name. My friend had named the car Sherman, as in the tank, because this thing was a tank. This thing was unbelievable. But I got to say, everything on that car was falling apart. Like from the time I got it, just every knob, everything was coming apart on that car, except the engine. It had an inline 6-cylinder carbureted engine, and that thing was bulletproof. The motor was running great when I got rid of the car. It's just everything else had broken. And the last straw, I remember I was out driving on the highway somewhere here in Seattle, where it rains now and again. It was pouring rain. And the wipers just stopped. They just weren't working. And at that point, it was like, okay, I probably need to get a better car. But I will tell you this, and I'll bet you there are people listening who know exactly what I'm talking about. Never name a car, because when it does come time to just have it towed away and taken to you're not just getting rid of a thing. You're sending Sherman off to his death. It was a little emotional.
Sherman.
Yeah. So just don't make that mistake.
Oh, that's awesome. All right. Question number 5. Well, you talked about Sherman the tank. Name your favorite movie featuring a Sherman tank.
Oh, well, how many movies? Can you give me candidates? How many movies feature a Sherman tank?
I don't know off the top of my head, but there's a lot of war movies out there. I think even the movie Tank, it was a Sherman tank. In that movie, you ever seen that? That was with what movie? Tank. Hang on, IMDb. What was the name of that? James Garner was in that movie. I believe Kelly's Heroes featured Sherman tanks. That was a Clint Eastwood movie.
That's a good one. I just saw some of that recently. Actually, it's one of those movies you stumble across it on TV. You maybe watch a little bit of it. What's the one with Tom Hanks? Saving Private Ryan. I'll bet you there's a Sherman tank in there. That was a good movie.
Would say, Sherman tanks were from the World War II. I don't know if those would be in Saving Private Ryan.
Wasn't that a World War II movie?
Oh, yeah, probably was. Yeah, duh. It's been a long day already, Rich. Yes, all right. So we'll assume there were Sherman tanks in Saving Private Ryan. And listeners, viewers out there, if Rich is wrong and there are not Sherman tanks in Saving Private Ryan, you put that in the comments or send us an email, and I will ask him a new question number 5, because that means he did not answer the question correctly. Okay? I like it. I like Kelly's Heroes. That's probably the one I would have picked. That's one of my favorite Clint Eastwood movies. Long though, it's a very very long movie, but a good one.
Yeah,
But a
yeah, I
good
like
one.
that one.
All right. 5 questions with Rich Freeman. Rich, thanks for playing along. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to go into my museum pick here. So we didn't do a museum pick last week because we were running long and we had guest hosts and a long interview. So I saved it for this week. I hope it was worth the wait. My museum pick this week, and it's odd to me that I'm starting to pick products like this as museum products, but it is kind of a museum product now. So I'm going to hold this up to the camera and I'm going to describe it. So folks, this is the Lenovo ThinkPad Tablet 2, okay? Which you'd think, wow, that doesn't seem like it was that old, but it actually is kind of old. This particular tablet is probably a good 5 years old, give or take. But the reason why I'm going to pick this as a museum pick is because at the time, Rich, when when products like this came out, maybe it was actually longer than 5 years ago. I'll have to look up the exact date, but it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. But Windows 8 was kind of fairly new to the market. And at the time, Microsoft had a big push to mobilize Windows because the iPad was basically dominating the market. And Microsoft's reaction was like, we've got to turn Windows into a tablet operating system. So that's what they did with Windows 8. And a lot of products like this got released. And I'm going to tell you this, Rich, and people out there, you might agree with me. Windows 8 was actually a really good experience on a tablet. It really, really was. In fact, it is definitely a better experience on a tablet than Windows 10 is, by far. However, the nature of having Windows on a tablet seems like it never really evolved, and people never really embraced Windows as kind of a tablet OS, if you will. This particular product too, Rich, also didn't age very well. At the time, a huge number of manufacturers put out tablets like this that were featuring the Intel Atom Z2700 series processor. And it was really good for the time. It did handle Windows 8 quite well, but it didn't handle it well for long. It basically could do one heavy application at a time, and you could do pretty much anything on this, but you could, as long as you did one thing at a time. So if you were working on a big spreadsheet, you'd probably want to close Excel before you open something else up. And ultimately, Microsoft dropped all support for this series processor as they moved into Windows 10. You could move them into Windows 10, but I think it was like the second iteration of Windows 10. They completely dropped support for it, so you couldn't update these any further, which relegates it to pretty much museum status. So about this, let me tell you about this. So this was, like I said, it was a 10-inch display, the Atom Z2760 processor, which is a dual-core, 4-thread, 1.8 gigahertz. It was not a rocket by any means, but it was pretty good, especially with Windows 8 back in the day. Windows 8 was very, very resource friendly. It was very slim, and it worked pretty well, especially when it launched. As Windows got heavier, though, it didn't work quite as well going forward. 720p display, Intel integrated graphics, 2 gigs of memory, which is also kind of a limitation on this. One of the reasons why it didn't. If it had thrown 4 in here, it might have been able to last a little bit longer. 64 gigs of eMMC storage. That was pretty common at the time, so pretty slow. But that's what was in here. But it was lightweight. You could get it with a digitizer, and it was a nice tablet to have for a while, Rich. It really was. But it's now in the museum and now no longer usable. Wah.
So two questions. One, I'm always curious, how heavy is that?
This is it is 1.25 pounds with, if you didn't get the digitizer, or the 3G, 4G, it was 1.25 pounds. If you get those extra things, it would add on just a teeny tiny bit of weight, but it's pretty light. It's pretty lightweight. And I used to carry this in my bag a lot. I used to travel with this. It would be my note-taking things and interviews, and I would use it to watch movies on and stuff. So I did use it for quite a long time. And it worked well, but eventually it's kind of unsupported now, and it doesn't work very well anymore. The battery's pretty much shot. So, but it was light. It was pretty lightweight even for its time.
Did it run like the Office applications, or were you using some tablet version of those, or?
No, this thing was full Windows. It could run Office apps, the whole Office suite. But like I said, you really couldn't run many of them at a time. So if you had Excel and Word open, you were pretty much done. It would be pretty slow and pokey. And then by the time you have a web browser open, it didn't multitask very well, from what I learned. But you could do everything on it. There was there was nothing it couldn't do, at least for a while. So, did you ever have anything like this? So, what do you carry? Do you ever carry just a tablet or like an iPad or something?
An iPad, yeah, it's an absolutely essential part of my traveling gear, and I use it exactly the way you were just kind of describing. When I go into an interview, I usually have questions prepared on that, and I can kind of jot notes on it too.
Yeah, very cool. There's definitely a need for tablets, and it seems like the Android tablets and the iPad they tended to absorb the more purpose-built apps for tablets, so those tend to be what people carry these days. But there's still a need and still a demand for Windows tablets. And as we know, Microsoft has the Surface line of tablets, and they've, I understand why Microsoft built the Surface line, but the one thing that I find unfortunate with Surface is that they really kind of cornered the market on Windows tablets, and there's just not a lot of OEMs making Windows tablets anymore because Microsoft kind of owns it with Surface because they really nailed it. It's a nice line of products. But I did happen to find that Lenovo still makes a business grade 10-inch Windows-based tablet. They still make one today. It's called the Lenovo Tablet 10. They dropped the ThinkPad moniker from it, but they still make one. It starts at $750. This is also my tech pick, folks, by the way, because that was then. This is now. They're using a lightweight Celeron N4100. Comes with Windows 10 Pro, 10-inch, 1920 by 1200 display, so it's a little bit taller, which is a little bit more business driven. Only 4 gigs of RAM, which I find kind of limiting. 64 gigs of PCIe, again, eMMC storage, so probably not the fastest storage in the world. But I think the idea behind these tablets is that you're going to be using a lot of cloud services with these because you're not going to have a ton of onboard storage. So if you're using Office 365 or one of those suites, I think it would connect well and actually probably work pretty well in that kind of environment. So they still make one. If you are interested in a Lenovo-based Windows tablet, it's there for you. They call it the Tablet 10. And so, Rich, do you know the difference between the ThinkPad Tablet 2 and the ThinkPad Tablet 10? The primary difference?
8.
8 is exactly the correct answer there. The difference is 8. So that is my museum pick, ThinkPad Tablet 2. I also reviewed this for ChannelPro. If you want to go back and read my original review, you can go and read that. It'll be on the site somewhere. And my tech pick, the Lenovo Tablet 10. Rich, that's it. Tell us, please, what happened, because I know James Gaskin did it, and in case you missed it, and if we missed it, we would want to read that because that's in case we missed it, which meant we probably missed it. Then I would like you to pull out the crystal ball, look ahead into the future, and tell us what you might see. And I know one thing next week that we will not see, but we'll talk about that when you're done.
Yes, well, if you want to catch up on news from the week that was, the place to go is our own James Gaskin's In Case You Missed It post. It appears every Friday on ChannelProNetwork.com. This week, he's going to be talking about some new Teams conferencing gear from Poly, kind of a timely release from those folks. A new security release from Kaspersky that rolls together their endpoint protection, EDR, and sandbox products into one big package. An interesting IT skills initiative from Microsoft. Microsoft has announced that they are going to teach 25 million people or help 25 million people worldwide develop technical skills through free and discounted services. We'll have a little bit more information about that. And then all I'll tell you is James is going to have a little bit to say about an appearance by Mr. Potato Head at a Canadian tire shop and the chaos that ensued. You'll just have to check out the column to see what that's all about. Next week, Matt's going to talk a little bit about what's going on and the implications for this podcast here. But we have our IoT Playbook online forum coming up online. We're going to be talking about Internet of Things solutions. There's some hardware news coming up in the industry too. I can't quite talk about what that is yet, but you're going to read all about it on ChannelProNetwork.com. So please visit daily.
Yeah, and you know what's funny, and now it's kind of ruined because my museum pick next week was Mr. Potato Head, and now I'm gonna have to pick something else because it's already been in the news and terrorized the tire store. And now we don't want to have him on the show anymore, Mr. Potato Head. I tell you. Yeah, so Rich, you alluded to it right there. We will not have a Channel Pro Weekly episode next week for you. We have got to take the week off to prepare for our IoT Playbook online forum, as well as our Raleigh Channel Pro online forum as well. So if you're interested in IoT, please definitely go and check out and join the IoT Playbook online forum. If you're in the Raleigh, North Carolina area or immediate vicinity, you'll want to check out the Channel Pro SMB online forum for Raleigh that you can go and join that as well. But it's gonna be a very, very busy week for us. So we will not have time to do a show, but we will be back the following week with we looked at the calendars. Rich, yes, we will be back the following week with a show, I believe.
Yep.
So we'll have lots to go over, lots more in store. Rich, do we have any interviews lined up for that next week's show?
Yeah, let me look that up for you real quick. So let's see, we're off next week. Oh yeah, well this will be interesting. So the week of July 13th, we have an executive from Lenovo who we are going to be connecting with. He, if I remember right, he's in Beijing.
Right. Yeah, this is the one that's going to be up at like 11 o'clock at night, his time to talk to us.
Exactly. So we are very grateful to have him willing to join us at a crazy hour like that. But it's an interesting time to talk to hardware manufacturers about what they're seeing in the market, and so I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Yeah, too. I would have saved my Lenovo museum pick had I put those together in my head, but that's okay. We're preluding that, so that's gonna be a really interesting interview, folks. So definitely make sure you check that out. The week of the 13th, we'll be back. Please subscribe to Channel Pro Weekly. Go to Google Podcasts, Apple Play, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe so episodes automatically come down to you, and you can listen wherever you happen to be, in the car, in the plane, on the train. If you're traveling, if you're just walking around the house, or just playing it in the office. We've got lots of stories, Rich. That you said that some offices they just play Channel Pro Weekly like over the PA every week when we have an episode, and they all just kind of listen together in the background and learn while they work. And that's why we're here. So you learn while you work, and you learn things that help you work, so your work can be good. I lost my train of thought there, Rich. I don't know what I was thinking. So do that. If you like to watch, we are on YouTube. Hit that red subscribe button and the bell so you get notified of new episodes, and that way you can watch there as well. ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. Go there each and every day for news, articles, white papers, downloads, resources, everything you need each day and every day to stay on top of what's going on in the industry and learn new skills and new things that will help you with your business. Very, very important to do. Podcast@ChannelProNetwork.com is the email address. We're at Channel Pro Network on LinkedIn and Facebook. We're at Channel Pro SMB on Twitter. Rich, what are you on the socials?
At Rich Free.
And I am at Matt Whitlock there. You can follow me as well. And that is going to wrap up episode 152. Thank you all very much for joining us. Please stick around for episode 153, not next week, but the week after. Okay, so the week of the 13th, we're going to take a little break. Have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend, everyone. Stay safe, socially distance. Don't set off firecrackers in your hands, okay? We see stories every year, people blowing off fingers because they're holding on to something when they light it. Don't do that. If you're going to use fireworks, safe. That's all we ask. Safety. Rich, you too. I know you live on the edge with the fireworks, so you need to be careful. All right, happy 4th of July, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks.